We talk endlessly about introverts and their need for solitude. We write entire books about empaths and their sensitivity. We have podcasts dedicated to narcissists and their chaos. But there is this one type of person that shows up in almost every relationship, every workplace, every family. And we never actually sit down and explain them. They are not villains. They are not always dramatic. Sometimes they are the quietest person in the room, until they feel invisible. And then everything changes. Fast. Almost like watching a completely different person walk into the same body. They are the partner who goes cold when you take too long to reply. The colleague who suddenly becomes difficult right after being left out of a meeting. The friend who calls 3 times and then acts like they never called at all when you finally pick up. Their psychology is probably the most misunderstood of anyone alive today. Because from the outside, it looks like neediness. But from the inside, it is something far older, far deeper, and far more human than most people are willing to admit. Picture this. It is 1994. You are 6 years old. Your mother is in the kitchen talking to someone, and you walk in excited to show her a drawing. She holds up one finger, and keeps talking. You stand there for 4 minutes, holding that drawing. And then you quietly walk away. A study published in Developmental Psychology in 2002 found that children who experienced repeated parental emotional unavailability before age 7 showed significantly elevated anxiety responses to social exclusion, with 68% developing hypervigilant attention to signs of rejection by early adolescence. That is not a personality flaw. That is an adaptation. The brain of a child is essentially a pattern detector. And when the pattern it detects over and over is, I disappear when I am not loud enough, it adjusts. It recalibrates. It decides that invisibility is the most dangerous state a person can be in. Picture this. It is 1998. You are 10. You did something good at school. Something real. And you come home to tell someone. But the house is loud, everyone is busy, and by dinner nobody asked. You learn that day that good things that go unnoticed did not really happen. And now watch what happens when that child grows up and walks into a relationship, into a job, into a group chat. They are not looking for attention. They are looking for confirmation that they exist. There is an enormous difference. Almost nobody explains that difference. This is why they monitor response times. Not because they are controlling. Because their nervous system was trained to read silence as abandonment. 1 unreturned text is data. 2 is a pattern. 3 is a verdict about their worth. Think about what this looks like at work. They send an email with a solid idea. No reply for 6 hours. By hour, for they have mentally resigned, rewritten the email 17 times in their head, and decided leadership probably hates them. Hour 7, the boss replies, great idea. They feel fine for 40 minutes. Researchers at the University of Michigan published findings in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2011 showing that social exclusion activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. For people with early rejection sensitivity, this response is amplified to a degree that makes brief social invisibility feel genuinely threatening to survival. They are not overreacting. Their brain is reacting exactly as it was built to react. The tragedy is that nobody built an instruction manual to go with it. This is also why they sometimes manufacture urgency. Not maliciously, unconsciously. If being calm and quiet means being forgotten, then becoming slightly louder becomes the only logical strategy the body knows. You see this in relationships constantly. Everything is fine. Then suddenly it is not fine. Then after the argument everything is fine again, and the other person is bewildered. What actually happened is that the person felt invisible, panicked, created noise to restore connection, and the connection was restored. The argument was never really about the dishes. A 2018 paper in the Journal of Adult Development noted that individuals with high rejection sensitivity engage in what researchers call proximity restoration behaviors. Essentially, emotional alarm systems designed to pull attachment figures back into attentive engagement. It is attachment theory, wearing a trench coat and carrying a grudge. They do not want drama. They want a signal. Just one. That they are still on your radar. Drama is what happens when the signal never arrives. Here is something nobody talks about. These same people are often intensely attuned to other people's emotional states. Because they spent years scanning every room for signs of rejection, they became extraordinarily good at reading faces, tones, pauses, and body language. Which means they are frequently the most emotionally intelligent person in any room they walk into. They notice when you are off before you say a word. They adjust their energy to yours without being asked. They are the ones who check on the person who said, "I'm fine," in a way that clearly meant nothing of the sort. Research published in Psychological Science in 2015 found that individuals with elevated rejection sensitivity scored significantly higher on empathy metrics, particularly in the area of affective empathy, the ability to actually feel what another person is feeling. Their wound became their superpower. Quietly, without a TED Talk about it. The cruelest irony in the universe is that the person most desperate to feel seen is often the one working hardest to make sure everyone else feels seen first. This is why they struggle with silence in relationships specifically. Not all silence. Productive silence, creative silence, comfortable silence. They can do those. But disappearance silence. The kind where someone who was present yesterday is unreachable today without explanation. That silence has a frequency they cannot tune out. Their partner goes quiet for an evening. Normal person thinks they had a long day. This person's brain runs a full diagnostic, reviews the last 48 hours of interactions, identifies 3 possible missteps, drafts an apology for something that has not been confirmed as a problem, deletes it, rewrites it, does not send it, spirals. The American Journal of Psychology published a 2019 study showing that adults with childhood emotional neglect histories demonstrate a 73% higher rate of catastrophic interpretation of ambiguous social signals compared to control groups. Ambiguous means a single unopened message. Catastrophic means their brain treated it like incoming fire. They are not irrational. They are running old software on new hardware. The software was built for a world where being ignored meant something was genuinely wrong. It is just that the world changed and nobody sent them the update. What is fascinating though, and this is the part most people completely miss, is that these individuals often have the deepest capacity for loyalty of anyone you will ever meet. Because they know exactly what it feels like to not be chosen, they choose people with their whole chest. They remember. They show up. They do not forget the people who once made them feel real. This shows up powerfully in how they parent. They become the parent who always responds, who always shows up to the thing, who asks follow-up questions 3 days later about the problem their child mentioned once in passing. They are rewriting the script in real time for the next generation. What they gave forward is profound. What they gave forward is a child who will never know what it feels like to stand in a doorway, holding a drawing while someone holds up one finger. That is not a small thing. That is everything. But here is what they lost, and still lose. Rest. The ability to simply exist in a relationship without auditing it. The capacity to receive a slow reply and feel nothing. That ease, that quiet certainty of being loved without constant confirmation, is the thing they are always reaching for and rarely fully hold. What makes them quietly remarkable is that they kept going into rooms that had hurt them before, into relationships that required a vulnerability they had every rational reason to refuse. They were burned and they came back, not because they were naive, because connection for them was always worth the risk. They are the lighthouse, standing at the edge of something vast and occasionally terrifying, sending out light on a regular schedule, regardless of whether any ship is watching. And lighthouses do not get much attention. They are not the ship arriving dramatically in the harbor. They are not the storm that everyone photographs. They are just there, consistent, quietly preventing disasters that nobody ever hears about. But here is the thing about lighthouses. They were built precisely because the dark is real, and somebody had to be brave enough to stand in it and keep the light on. That is not weakness dressed up in pretty language. That is the original definition of strength. If this hit home for you, if you recognize yourself in that 6-year-old standing in the doorway, or recognize someone you love in that person running diagnostics at midnight, share this with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone who fears being invisible is simply make sure they know they were seen. Please subscribe. And if you want to support these deep dives into the psychology most people walk right past, hit that join button and become a channel member. These stories exist because you keep showing up for them. And unlike some people's situationships, that actually means something.